What if the system designed to protect you became your worst enemy? Imagine escaping an abuser only to find yourself the one in handcuffs. It's happening more than you think. Today, we're exposing the dark side of justice, where survivors are punished instead of protected. My name is Nicole Brittany, author and empowerment coach, and this is the Self Mastery Podcast, where we talk about healing, we talk about empowerment, we talk about the tough issues, and we talk about reclaiming your confidence after abuse. This is a subject that the world needs more guidance on. Are abuse survivors genuinely protected? This is the subject of today's discussion. We're taking a look at a case in Oklahoma that brought tears to my eyes. We're introducing a newly termed phenomenon, floodlighting, and we're discussing the truth about domestic violence in the U.S. today. Our goal? To expose the failures in our system, to spark outrage because they will, and to arm you with hope and actionable steps. Let's dive in. So picture this. You're a mother. You've just discovered that your partner has abused your child. You gather up the courage to seek help, expecting safety, expecting justice. Instead, you are arrested, you are persecuted, and you are sentenced to decades in prison, not for harming anyone, but for failing to stop the abuse that you didn't even know was happening. This isn't a hypothetical situation. This is the reality that Tondalao Hall faced in Oklahoma. And we see you, sister. In 2006, a woman, Tondalao Hall, reported her boyfriend's abuse of their children, only to be charged under the state's failure to protect law. She's now sharing her story, and I applaud her for that. A story that resulted in a 30-year prison sentence in the state of Oklahoma. Tondalao served 15 years in jail before being released in 2019. She and her children's abuser walked free with a 10-year suspended sentence after pleading guilty. After pleading guilty. Like, I don't understand this. And this isn't an isolated event. I won't take us down a rabbit hole, but look it up. The failure to protect law. The failure to protect law in Oklahoma reflects a twist in the justice system. Survivors of abuse, already overburdened in most cases with fear, poverty, manipulation, are then held to this impossible standard of heroism. Like, I don't get it. I really don't understand. Save yourself and save your family, or we will lock you up. This makes no sense when you know the experiences of those who have been abused. Help you? No, but we'll lock you up and we'll watch your abuser go free. I want you to let that message sit with you for a minute. You don't have to trust me. The stats back this up. Oklahoma ranks among the deadliest states for domestic violence. So why would they have a law like this? Is it an accident? 40.1% of women in Oklahoma experience intimate partner abuse on a yearly basis. Every single year. 40%. And this is according to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. In 2023, 122 citizens of Oklahoma, the majority of them women, the majority of them children, lost their lives to abusers. That is not protection. That is a system failing at its most basic promise. Why does this matter? Because these laws don't just punish survivors. They send a message. Be quiet. Stay silent. Or risk everything. It's betrayal disguised as justice. All right, so let's zoom out for a second. And rankings shift depending on what you measure, but there are 3 states in America that are consistently known as danger zones for domestic violence. Guess what they are? They're Oklahoma, Alaska, and New Mexico. The Violence Policy Center has shared that Alaska's rate of women killed by men is over double the national average, and that's in Alaska alone. New Mexico isn't far behind. The 2022 report in New Mexico revealed that 61% of women reported experiencing intimate partner violence within their lifetimes. And Oklahoma, dare I say Oklahoma one more time today, but there are high crime rates and very, very strict laws that make things even harder for survivors. So what's driving this? Well, for one, weak laws. Laws focus more on punishment than prevention. And then you've got the cultural beliefs that are going on that make survivors feel ashamed to speak up for themselves. And quite simply, there aren't enough resources. So you've got to think about the makeup of these three states. They're all mostly rural, which means a lack of resources, very few shelters, underfunded hotlines. In Alaska, for example, most towns 2 to 4 hours apart. So imagine finding yourself in an abusive relationship and having to travel for hours to get away. You're isolated. This is forced isolation due to circumstances. The needs of the abused in these situations are way worse than what most of us have ever experienced. And the laws have to address this. You can't use these circumstances to target and exploit the abuse. So when survivors escape and seek justice, herein enters the legal system, their next abuser. As if you haven't gone through enough. And I've been there. This is why in so many cases, legal measures are not used to deal with abuse. And I could do a whole 3 to 4 episodes on just this right here. But to keep it brief, scars fade, bruises fade. Sometimes you're hit and you don't even have a mark to show for it. Emotional and psychological abuse, nothing physically proves this harm unless you record it. And even then, it depends on the perception of the person viewing it. So you get to the legal system and you have to prove that you have been abused to get justice. You have to prove that you have been abused when more often than not, you're proving this against a master manipulator, because most abusers are master manipulators. Witnesses, hard to come by, even when they exist. So a lot of abuse is done in isolation. A lot of abuse is done in secret. And when it's not, a lot of witnesses do not want to be a part of this ongoing thing. Dare I say drama, because a lot of people think about it as drama. They might not feel about the situation the same way the victim does. And then they might be threatened. The abuser might come threaten or manipulate them not to testify. I mean, this stuff goes deep. You never really know what a person is going through under these circumstances. It's complex. And then sadly, you have the police dismissing he said, she said cases because they're too complex. They're too messy. You have judges that dismiss survivors as hysterical because they can't see past the person's triggers and the person's pain. In 2021, the American Bar Association did a study that found that only 14% of DV cases resulted in convictions. So your chances are pretty slim if you go this route. That's not even justice, that's a lottery. The end of today's podcast will address some of the ways you can protect yourself. The situation isn't hopeless, but you do need to be informed and you do need to empower yourself. So let's switch gears for a second, because we have talked about some really heavy topics and I want to take just a little bit of a breather, but we still want to keep our eyes open because this next one is a sneaky little red flag that's been making its rounds on social media, and it is called floodlighting. All right, so you've probably heard the term love bombing. This is where someone overwhelms you with affection, with gifts, with attention, all the love, but way too soon. Well, floodlighting is kind of like love bombing's little cousin. But instead of drowning you in compliments and gifts, the person gives you their deepest, darkest secrets within days, sometimes within hours of meeting you. All right. Floodlighting is when someone overshares these intensely personal or intensely traumatic experiences. And they do this to create a false connection with you. So they make you feel like you're the only one who understands them. Like you must be so special if they're trusting you with these deep, dark secrets. But it's not real trust, it's manipulation. So instead of building a connection over time, They force this emotional bond really, really fast. This makes it hard for you to set boundaries. It makes it hard for you to even see what's really happening because you're so overwhelmed with the information. What's wild is how social media has been normalizing the whole thing. So there are a ton of viral posts, people joking about trauma dumping on a first date, or, I met somebody new and I've started unpacking my life story, and they're making these videos and memes about it. But here's the thing, not all oversharing is innocent, and not all oversharing is manipulative. And I think when we make light of these situations, it really blurs the line, and some people get really confused. So, someone who's being real and overshares, they might feel embarrassed after. They might apologize. They might even shy away from you. There are even trauma survivors who overshare because of abandonment issues. That's a whole nother story. But a floodlighter is using this tactic to strategically trap you in their emotional way. So imagine this. You're on your dating site. You match with someone, conversation's great, you decide to meet up, and within that first or second date, they're telling you all about their abusive ex, they're telling you about their childhood trauma, they're telling you about how they've never been able to trust anyone until they met you. So it all feels intense, it feels emotional. And to some people, it might feel special, but you got to take a step back, because does this person know you? No, they are reeling you in. All right. So once you become emotionally invested in a person, it becomes much harder to leave. So, how do you spot floodlighting? Here are 3 signs that you can look out for. For one, it all happens way too soon. If someone is telling you their deepest, darkest secrets before they even know your last name, that's a red flag. If it feels like a trap, so if they make you feel like you have to respond a certain way, like there's this pressure to comfort them or to reassure them, that's emotional control, and it's happening very early on. So you want to watch out for that. All right. And lastly, they test your boundaries, and they're testing your boundaries really early. So if you try to pull back, they might guilt trip you by saying things like, I knew I shouldn't have trusted you, or I guess I was right, no one cares, like, my bad. All of this manipulation, big red flags. Arm yourself. Not everyone who overshares is toxic, but the difference between oversharing and manipulation is the intention behind it. And you can't know that person's intention if you just met them. I mean, many of us don't know people's intention that we've known for many, many years. A floodlighter is trying to fast track your emotions. So notice the signs and be in control of you. True connections aren't rushed, they're built over time. The system's broken. Society is making light of very serious issues, and yet still we have to navigate this crazy world as healed individuals. And this is why I want to remind you right now how strong you are, how capable you are. No matter what you've been up against, you've made it this far and you still want to be a better person. I applaud you. For those still vulnerable to abuse, safety planning is a must. You've got to look into it. Build an escape plan. List out your emergency contacts. This can be friends, family, hotlines. Identify the safe places around you. Know them and know them well. The National Domestic Violence Hotline has templates that you can use for safety planning. If you are attacked, act fast. Document your injuries. Take photos. Go to the doctor. Go to the hospital if you have to. Make a trail of documentation. Make a trail of witnesses on your behalf. Look into local advocate groups that might be able to help you. And you don't have to call them right now, but it's good to know who they are. When it comes to those dealing with the justice system, realize the system is not built to protect survivors. It's built to protect itself. But that does not mean that you're powerless. Document everything, even when you think you don't need to. And I can't stress this enough. Paper trails save lives. If you're experiencing abuse, or even if you think you might experience abuse, keep records. Keep records of text messages, keep records of emails, keep records of voicemails, screenshots, everything. And if you've got time before going to the legal system, please do some research. Know your rights, Advocate for yourself, or if you have the means to find a lawyer, let them advocate on your behalf. Knowledge. Knowledge is power. Look up your state's DV laws and use them to your advantage. Use them to protect yourself. The system is flawed, but you can outsmart it. Survivors have to be strategic, not just strong. So stay informed, stay prepared. Build your safety net before you need it. And healing is possible to survivors like Tondalao Hall, who is now an advocate. Prove it. Seeking help isn't weakness, it's defiance against a system that has failed us. The road for abuse survivors is riddled with obstacles, laws that punish instead of protect, courts too backed up to care, ongoing abuse. And despite this, survivors still shine with unshakable resilience. By exposing these failures, by demanding change, and by lifting each other up, we can make a future where protection isn't an empty word and it isn't a dream, but it is our reality. You're not alone in this fight. Thank you for listening in to the Self Mastery Podcast. If this message resonates with you, drop a comment, like, subscribe, share this with someone who might need it.